And let's bring in Leanne Herring from the Rebel Walk.
Good morning, Mark. How are you?
Morning, I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing good, here in Georgia, getting ready to kick off a little bit of recruiting on the road against number 6 Milton against number 21 Buford tonight. It's going to be a big game in the state of Georgia, and on national picture we have I believe it's 19 seniors between both teams that are committed to Division I schools. I believe that's the most in Georgia program history in the state of Georgia since 2014 when it was Roswell against Grayson. So there's going to be a lot of A-list commits. We do have an Ole Miss commit, a tight end. Hayden Bradley is going to be on the Buford side of the ball. And, of course, looking for some up-and-comers from the 26 and 27 class as well on both sides of the ball. So really excited to kick off tonight here in Georgia.
So, folks, if you follow Leanne on Twitter/X, you're going to see the term "crutin" all over the place. And that's a term I didn't come across until, I started to cover Ole Miss, Mississippi State, and Alabama back around 2000 when I came down to Mississippi and started covering college football, and I crutin all over the place. Okay.
All over the place. No, it's really a term that I love, and I just think I think it's just fun because it's a nonstop game. I got here yesterday afternoon, and kind of looking at the scope, looking at players, always looking at films. It's a nonstop game. But like I said, exciting game tonight in Georgia to open up the season. As far as the national picture, there's a lot. As much as I love to cover Ole Miss in college football, I'm glad to be back on the road because it really does start here with the high school football coaches and the high school athletes out here on the road. There's a lot of great talent, and always looking to see new faces and names that you may not know.
And Leanne, I just have to say, I marvel at the commitment of the recruiting analysis that you do because Kirby Smart famously said here in recent years, recruiting never stops. It's 24/7, 365. It's all the time. You've got to be committed to it. It's a grind. But on the media side of things, you are showing that kind of commitment. You're locked in on Fridays with high school football. Then you got to switch gears on Saturday. And I believe you even dive into the NFL on Sunday as well.
Do. I think that, I'm also a mom too of 2 boys and 2 girls. And I think that when I became a mom and that switch, it kind of helped me balance. But, as long as I've been in media my background actually started working when I was at Brown. I went from being a cheerleader to working in the athletic department, and I was an equipment manager. And that's kind of where it started. So I was inside of the program, learning how to do filming, learning from some of the best coaches in the Ivy League. And I think that was really the time where I knew that if I ever got on this side of the board and becoming in media, that I would treat it a lot different because, with recruiting, it's 24/7, as we know with NIL, and it's just a different age. But I always say that I want to treat these families, I want to treat these kids that I meet, regardless if they come to Ole Miss, I want to treat them like if my boys or my girls were getting recruited. So I try to make them like family. I have a lot of kids that I've helped work with that aren't on Ole Miss rosters, even though that I wish they were, but it's exciting to see them, play at Kentucky and a few other places. So it's really a rewarding experience, and that's kind of my approach to it. I want to share their story because I think a lot of times we don't get to see that access, and a lot of our fans in the SEC don't get to see the access of all the commitment because if you think about it, these are a lot of young kids not only balancing their football commitments, but also balancing their home life as well as their academic life. So it's a lot when you think about it at 15 and 16. Were we doing that at that age, especially on this kind of stage? And now with the age of recruiting, it's changed so much. Like I said, NIL has played such a big factor, and it's trying to keep up with the Joneses on overdrive all the time, but I enjoy it.
So, Leanne, in regards to the game you're covering tonight and scouting for tonight, any particular players that you're looking at, and what are their connections and their offers and possible commitments at this point?
Well, I think a lot of the highlight as far as like we said, on both sides of the ball, of course, you have a young team that Coach Ben Reeves has done a fantastic job over at Milton last year, winning the state championship after him making the transition to head coach. There's a lot of talented players on that. I think the big story has been Luke Nickel coming back, returning. He's a Miami commit. Ole Miss was going after him. C.J. Wiley, another really talented receiver. They're committed, but again, I'll be looking at some of the guys over on both sides of the ball. I really never go into a weekend, a Friday night game. I like to look at all the players because, you just never know. And I think that this is the first game of the season, so this is really where we see. And yes, while some of these players committed, as we know in recruiting, if there's a really talented player, you really never stop recruiting them. So I think that's kind of how I go into each weekend, each mind. There's a lot of talented players hoping, it may not work out at where they're committed and we can get them back at Ole Miss and, or help them get into it to another university. Like I said, this is a really talented group on both sides of the ball, which isn't expected because Georgia, like Texas and some other powerhouse states, produce such great talent year in and year out.
Absolutely. It's amazing the meteoric rise of Georgia high school football in the last decade or two. The state has basically supplanted California as the number 3 state in recruiting in terms of the depth of blue chip players. As it pertains to Ole Miss, what is the recruiting landscape look like right now? Are there any targets out there that people should be looking out for?
There's always targets every time. I think right now we, of course, with fall camp starting a few weeks ago and the focus with, Ole Miss Center, where Ole Miss stands as far as the college football play of all the pressure. I think that's really been the focus. But I think some key players, of course, that Lane Kiffin will continue to commit, of course, is in-state wide receiver Caleb Cunningham, who, was hoping to come to Ole Miss, is committed. I think he will still be a heavy target. I think that the Rebels will also go back against Keelan Russell. He's one that we watched a long time. He's a very talented quarterback out of Duncanville who was committed to SMU. He was also being recruited by us, but he is also committed to Alabama. And when that commitment happened, he pretty much brought a lot of talented receivers and a lot of offensive players. But I think right now in the game of recruiting, I always say it's a long way to December. So I think that right now the Rebels will continue to recruit, like I said, in-state players like Caleb Cunningham, LaDarian Clardy, Ty Mims. Those are kids that haven't made decisions yet, but are pending post. LaDarian Clardy is really another talented safety that was supposed to commit in early August, but has taken a trip since then to Washington and some other places. He's been one of the Rebels' top targets. He's pushed back his commitment. So I think right now the focus will be on, as far as the recruiting scape, is trying to get those players in-house. And I think a lot of the players, despite taking official visits as far as the 2025 class is concerned, they're waiting to see how the season starts and how the dynamic, even though they've been there many of times, I think it's different going into your senior year. Also going into the way Ole Miss is going into the season. Not that they haven't been in this position before, but this year it really seems like Ole Miss has put himself, Lane Kiffin has put himself in a legitimate position to make the long haul. And I think a lot of these players are really waiting to see if this is going to happen, if this is going to translate on the field. And I think once we start getting the season rolling, we're going to see a lot of recruits see that this is a for real team and that it's translating on the field. And I think that that's going to make it a lot easier for them to possibly come to Oxford.
We got Leanne Herring on the line from the Rebel Walk. Please check out her work right there, and you can see her X handle, and you can follow everything that she's got going Monday, Friday, or Saturday, and Sunday. High school, college, the NFL with Leanne right there. Let's get to the 2024 Rebels. They're about halfway through fall camp right now. Before we dive into the football, I got to ask you about this. This is not my thing. People love gossip. They love situations like this. They say that the quarterback hits the pretty girls. I haven't really tracked to that myself, but based on this situation, so Jackson Dart and his girlfriend, some type of falling out. I'm not going to take sides. I'm not even going to believe what's out there because I have no idea. But just in terms of the Ole Miss fan base and how they've responded to this, this has become just a story that has just gone beyond viral.
No doubt. Like I said, when you brought it up and we were talking about it, previous to the show, I really haven't paid much attention to it. But it's funny. Like I said, gossip and media. But like you hear all our football staff say at Ole Miss a lot of time. Keep the main thing. And I think despite what all the rumors that are going on between Jackson Dart and his off-field issues, it really doesn't seem to have affected him, because if you see him in fall camp, we have some of our Rebel Walk staff out there who's been there daily, and it's really exciting to see the focus. And I think that Lane Kiffin and his staff have really put them in a better position as far as having to handle the hype. Like I said, the expectation has been so high, and the bar has been set so high that we know that there's going to be a lot of gossip, a lot of rat poison, as we like to hear. So I think that this group, especially Jackson Dart in the position that he's in, he seems more focused than ever. Not that he wasn't before, but I really have seen the team, as far as on an overall scope, when you talk to players, when you talk to coaches, that they're having to handle and approach the situation a lot different. So, but this is also the same media bunch that reported that he had an ACL torn, which we all, off season, which we all knew was not true and didn't happen. So, like I said, I'm keeping the main thing on the main thing when it comes to Jackson Dart. But from what I can see and from what we've been reporting and over at the Rebel Walk from our guys that have been out there covering practice daily, Jackson Dart, along with the wide receiving core and that depth that he has, it doesn't seem like it's shaking him too much.
And Leanne, just to give you my take on the approach in terms of what I do every couple of days, Ole Miss football news, just to see, okay, what's out there, what's going on, what's the latest, that sort of thing. And we had prepared to do this segment, and that was late last night. I typed that in, and I'm like, this is all I see on here. Can I get some football news? Okay, we'll go with this. The running back room is loaded. Of course, on the national scene, people are focused on Quinshon Judkins is gone, but that's old news. Ulysses Bentley and Henry Parrish, of course, a guy that's come back to Ole Miss from Miami, and Logan Diggs is an experienced guy who's been at LSU. And now I'm seeing that Matt Jones is making a splash in camp, that he might be able to work his way into the running back room. Just your thoughts about all the weapons on offense.
Oh, it's ridiculous how many weapons, and it's, of course, like Lane mentioned during SEC media days, when we lost Quinshon, that for if any team that he was on, he's an impact player. We saw it day in and day out. But again, in true Lane Kiffin fashion, we got to focus and play the cards what we're dealt. And I think that's the one thing about Lane Kiffin and his staff. The way he set things up, he's running his program like an NFL program, to be quite honest. And I think that the depth and development that he's creating with every player, where he's brought such a balance to the Ole Miss offense. And I think what's been really interesting to see, and I think is going to be a successful element in how they play and how they translate into the upcoming season, is that he's been able to take players at the running back position and several other positions, been plug and play guys. And we're not talking just about finding a great athlete from a transfer portal, from your veterans, from your young guys. He's developing all the teams in such a way, all his athletes in such a way, where he's getting such a balance and a mix and production from every different category, from transfers, from veterans, from young guys, where he can keep it fresh. And I think that that's going to be an interesting and also a big proponent in how he plays the season. And I just think that a lot of players that we don't hear a lot about, you can only tell so much for fall camp. So I always tell people, it's not until that first Saturday during kickoff, when you see the guys get in full pads, when you see them going up against somebody who's not their brother, as I call it, like in a fall practice kind of setting, and the adrenaline, so you can really understand and see. But I think what Lane Kiffin has done, and along with his coaching staff, you got to applaud him, how he's running that program, but the depth that he's created, and more so the balance at every position. And, you have to talk about the defensive side of the ball and that defensive front. Lane mentioned it, coming off the bus, that, he recruited off this offseason, finding length and size, and he's definitely found it. That has been my take at fall camp, is that defensive front is going to be something dangerous. And I think it is much needed for this Rebel offense for this Rebel defense to be successful. And, Jared Ivey is at 285. Now that I think he's going to have such a phenomenal year. Putting on that extra weight now allows the Ole Miss defense to be able to plug and play him as in the inside, in the outside. There's just a lot of players. TJ, he started out as TJ Dudley, that transfer from Clemson last year, but now he's going by, I believe it's his mother's maiden name, TJ Daughtry. He's been a really interesting player to watch, going from the scout team, not being eligible, but I think he's going to be a great complement at the linebacker position with transfer Chris Paul, of course, from last year. I think that those two are, some names that we've seen out of fall camp that have just really been productive, and I think are going to be a great complement. So I think there's a lot of players, not just one set of players, that are really having an impact this season and have just made the commitment to put on weight. You can tell that they've been working hard this offseason, and I think we're going to see it the first couple Saturdays going in. But that defensive front has been exciting to watch at camp.
No, it's a great point, and I'm glad you hit on it because nobody has questioned Lane Kiffin's ability to dial it up, obviously, and he has built a tremendous culture there at Ole Miss. And the skill position players are stout; they are among the best in the nation. But this team is worn out in 4 quarters against the likes of Alabama and others, and that defensive front's going to be key. And we hear good things about Jamarian Brown as well as Xavier Harris on that defensive front. So Ole Miss looking to take that step in the trenches. You mentioned coming out and getting hit for the first time in anger, not by a brother, and that's going to happen against Furman in week 1. Well, if you look at those first 4 games, obviously the coaches and players take them seriously, but there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of resistance. What are you looking for that first month of the season before things get really down and dirty in the SEC in regards to this, the development of this team?
I think, those first 4 games, especially in the SEC, they've been called cupcake games. They've been called, the starter games and everything. But I think that with Ole Miss and the focus this season is that every game is important, no matter whether you're playing Furman or whether you're playing Georgia at home. Every game is important because you're going to have, because, with the schedule and the way that the development is going with them, and you mentioned it, is can Ole Miss, even though they have the depth, even though they have the talent and the skill set, can they make it through 4 full quarters of football without losing gas on the break? And I think that that's going to be this test. And I think that we're going to see a lot of those first 4 weeks. I feel like they're going to use a lot of their experienced players, but much like the NFL preseason, I wouldn't be surprised if Lane Kiffin uses some of his younger guys, use some of his transfers that maybe he hasn't really seen as far as with this program in the field to see and kind of feel it out and see how it goes, to see what kind of players he can use, because I feel like the depth that we have this season is going to be tremendous. But we also have to understand that while some of these transfers have played at other stages, they haven't quite played on a stage like Ole Miss and in the SEC. So I feel like the first couple weeks are going to be important and focused, but it will be a lot of much similar to the NFL preseason, seeing a lot of familiar faces and unfamiliar faces, kind of to see where things stand and how Lane is and his staff is going to utilize certain players that we may not know a lot about, but could be impact players other than the names that we talk about, like Jordan Watkins on offense, Trey Harris and other. Don't be surprised if you see a lot of young guys also step up to the plate and get some playing time just to kind of see where they stand.
Leanne, before we let you go, we got a comment coming in from Cody Clearman, who is saying, can't wait to experience the Grove. So I have covered about 15 or 20 Ole Miss games at Vaught-Hemingway, but I was with the media. I had to prepare for the game. I never got to experience the Grove. So you got to give us a taste of the Grove. I've been in that same situation. I always say, everyone always wants to invite me to the Grove and come in, and I always make it. I'm kind of a superstitious, traditional kind of person, so I always do make a pre-walk through the Grove. But I know that I can't stay long because the tailgating, the fun, and I was talking about this yesterday on a show that I did on the way coming into Atlanta. What I love about the Grove is, of course, you have your chandeliers, you have all your signature Ole Miss hottie toddy elements. But what I also love is just that so many people come in that are not necessarily Rebel fans that come to experience the tailgate, because I'm talking, people and families that have been doing this for a long time. They have their traditions. The travel spreads are phenomenal. So if you thought that, if you ever get hungry in the media press box and you can sneak your way over there, you're probably going to get some great food and some great things. I just think that the tradition, the love, and the energy. But I think when a place is doing it right, when you have fans that are Texas fans, Tennessee fans, it may not necessarily be Ole Miss fans, and come just to the games to enjoy it, because I just think it's just a once in a lifetime experience, and there's just so many different people from so many different walks of life that for a couple hours on Saturday are breaking bread and just like a family. And that's what I love. Like you mentioned earlier about Lane Kiffin and the culture, and I think he's really brought it out in so many ways, the culture, as far as not just the family on the football field, but the family and the culture outside the football field in Oxford. Folks, lock in on the Rebel Walk. Ole Miss Evie has been so good to us here at the Voice of College Football for such a long time, and the entire staff there. And follow Leanne there. It's Leanne Herring. You see her X platform, and where you can find her right there. Leanne, thank you so much for stopping by. Great to see you, and have a great time tonight covering high school football and on through the
Thank
weekend.
you. I'm super excited. Thanks, Mark, for having me and all these hotty toddy.